and we're going to get into Rum Fest a little bit today. 2014 Guinness World Record for the largest rum tasting. 2018 International Brand Ambassador of the Year from Tales of the Cocktail. And finally, 2020, this year, kicked off his own rum brand, Equiano. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Burrell.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good, sir.
Long time.
It has been a long time, and it was very interesting because Lisbon Bar Show, I was still pretty new to this podcast thing at Lisbon Bar Show, so I was still sort of finding my legs, and that's the thing. I just passed my 200th episode for the podcast.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's like 200 more than I've ever done.
Yeah. I luckily enough got Dale the Groff as my 200th episode, which is a huge milestone for me. Now it's like, okay, we're into season 3 now. Like, let's start getting towards number 300 episode. So I'm going to link the original podcast into the description so people can go sort of back. But what's the brief origin story of Ian Burrell and sort of how you sort of came to be as the Rum Ambassador? Because I think people have to understand is like, you are the Rum Ambassador, the International World Rum Ambassador, but you don't technically work until recently. You don't technically work for a brand. You're you're an ambassador without technically a brand. You do a whole spirit category, which I don't think there's a lot of people out there that do have that sort of title. Like you're a whole category ambassador.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I've only worked literally for one brand in my life, and that was being a Jamaican. When Ray and Nephew and Appleton was launched in the UK in the mid 90s, I just happened by chance to come across and meet up the general manager of the company, and they felt that it was a good idea to actually hire a bartender to talk to other bartenders about their rum. I was like, wow, that's a really good idea, because within the industry, brand ambassadors were all marketing people, had no idea what it was like to actually be behind the sticks. So I was made the first rum ambassador in the UK. A few years later, 95, 96, but it was only like 7 years later after really learning about history, as being a bartender, but also going into other bars and talking about Appleton rum. It's only when I was asked to help launch Appleton in New Zealand and in Australia, that's when I realized that I really wanted to be someone who traveled around the world and spoke about the category of rum. So if it wasn't for my trip back in 2003 down to New Zealand, and then 2004 down to Australia, I probably would never have been a rum ambassador, because when I came back from that trip, I was like, this is what I want to do.
And the thing is, 2003, like I think remind a lot of the youngsters out there, like this is before the internet. Like there would have been like some very, very rudimentary AOL style like forums online where you can talk about it. But like bartenders in this day and age really are sports a little bit. The fact that they can literally go on their smartphone and go click. What is Jamaican rum? And you get pages and pages and articles and articles. Back then, and there was no books really either, because there were no rum experts, so you couldn't go to the local library or the bookstore and pick up a book on rum either. Like it just didn't exist.
Yeah, it didn't exist. And how I had to learn was I had to leave my job behind a bar, leave working with Appleton, and travel around the Caribbean on my own dime, going to distilleries, learning about rum. And I would go to the distilleries, whether it would be Jamaica, Antigua. They thought I was crazy. Like, why do you want to come and talk about rum, learn about rum? We just drink it. And I was like, no, there are rums that people like to sip like a brandy or whiskey. And they're like, no. So I was even getting pushback from the rum guys that made the rums, because they were just used to making local rums. And all the rums that we were seeing in Europe, they never saw, because it just went abroad. It was aged abroad and it was sold in small quantities. But I believe that that rum really had a premium, a level of premium that needed to be spoken about. And working with Appleton really opened my eyes to that. And then that's, as I said, that's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was tell people about the rum category and how can I get paid to do that, because that was going to be my job from now to the future. So as Confucius says, if you can find a job, if you can find a job that aligns with your passion, you never have to do a day's work. So I don't feel I'm working.
So, like, again, like if the rum brands are sort of pushing back, the distillery guys are like, well, what are you even talking about, man? Premium rum? There's no such thing as premium rum. Again, premium rum as a category is less than 20 years old. Like as a category is not a thing.
Well, it's we say this, it's less than 20 years old, as in to be accepted in say in the US and Europe and places like that. There's always been premium rum. There's always been rums that have been sold at a premium, whether they were made in certain types of quantities, whether they were packaged to look. I mean, Appleton were one of the first, and this is back in the 60s and 70s. They used to put things on their label like premium aged rums, tropically aged. A lot of rums actually by accident became premium only because they were sitting in casks because they couldn't sell them. So when Don the Beachcomber back in 1930 started pushing and promoting really extensively, the reason why these rums were so old because they couldn't be sold into America because of prohibition. So they were sitting in casks as old. By the time Don the Beachcomber got them, the regular 5-year-old rum he would have bought was now 15, 17 years old. And hey, the rest is history. But so premium rums have always been there. They've just never been marketed to the general public.
So that was 2003. Where do we go from 2003 to 2007?
Wow. So between 2003, 2007, this is where I started having that vision of being that person to talk about rum, doing seminars, masterclass, tastings, working with various different brands, trying not to be associated with one brand, but being associated with a category. And I took all my savings back in 2007 and created the world's first international rum festival. And I was flattered recently when Richard Seal from Foursquare Distillery did a presentation about the moments in the history of rum that's really changed the business. And he highlighted 2007 Rum Fest in London that Ian Burrell put on as one of the defining moments in rum. And I was in tears when he came out of that, because I was like, wow, because I just saw it as me spending all my savings and not being able to buy a house or a property or putting a deposit in the property, doing some crazy idea of doing a rum festival, and lots of people saying that will never work. What are you doing? But hey, close your ears to those doubters and those haters, and you'll be able to persevere. And this year we celebrated our 14th year of Rum Fest. So, and there are rum festivals all over the world that I've influenced. So, so it's a good thing I didn't listen to those guys. And, but yeah, that's where it really started off. 2007, the very first UK Rum Fest.
What was the push? What was the entrepreneurial drive to sort of start something like this? Again, we keep going back because I think even today, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of ideas that people are like, oh, is this going to work? Like, what's the driving force where you're like, nope, I know this is going to be good. I know this is going to pan out. I know that I'm going to make this work the best I can. When, like, again, we go back to like not just personal in your little bubble doubters, but like distilleries. Like the distilleries go, what are you doing, man? Like, no one wants to drink our rum and sip it out of like an ISO glass. No one wants to sip it out of an ISO glass and talk about the terroir of Jamaica or the terroir of the Caribbean. What was the driving force behind you knowing that this was going to? Did you know it was going to work out, or was it still like 90% yes, I can do this, 10% oh shit, I've made a horrible error of choices?
I never believed it was error choices, but you always have that doubt. Is it going to work? Are people going to see the same thing that you see? Because everyone sees things in a different way. But when you see these other spirits out there, you see whiskeys from all over. And most people in Europe, when they default to whiskey, they default to Scotch. America is different. They default to bourbons and ryes. Of course, in Canada, they default into their own style of whiskey. The Americans like, that's not real whiskey, but it's still whiskey. But I would say, well, why can't that happen for rum? Because I love Jamaican rums, but I'd constantly be arguing with people from Barbados about their rums. They're like, no, Barbados rum is the best. And I'd be like, no, Jamaican rum is the best. And then you have someone from Puerto Rico come in there and say, no, hombre, Puerto Rican rum is the best, and your rum has got too much funk inside there and this. And I'm like, you got a Puerto Rican, you got a Jamaican, you got a Barbadian arguing about rum. I'm like, well, wait a minute. They're doing the same thing in whiskey. You have an American basically saying bourbon is the best. And then you got a Scottish person saying Scotch is the best. And Irish whiskey, which is one of my favorites, basically saying they're the best. I'm like, well, why is rum not seen in that type of light? And when I started seeing people drinking and sampling and tasting rums, and then saying, which was for me one of my favorite phrases, which, this doesn't taste like rum. This tastes too good. I knew I had to create a platform or a way to get more and more people doing the same thing. Rums and saying, this doesn't taste like rum. This tastes too good. Because once they do that, that's a new rum person to add. And the only way to do that was to get liquid and doing it in a festival like the wine guys do, like the beer guys do, and like a lot of the whiskey events I saw, like Whiskey Lives back in the early 2000s, evolving and popping around. So even though I knew it was going to be a risk because it hadn't been done before, I was confident that it was going to succeed.
So fast forward to the aforementioned. What was your big changes
to this year? Fast forward to this year.
So like with COVID, everything's got, like, we're doing a live stream right now, Zooms and all this different sort of stuff. Obviously you adapted because you still did Rum Fest this year, right? It still went ahead.
Yeah. We didn't do it in the same way as we normally do, with like thousands of people walking around an exhibition hall tasting and sampling rums. We did an online event where you got to taste and sample rums at home. We sent the rums to your house. You got to sample and taste the rums there. But part of the one of the most important things about Rum Fest that I feel is education. Education will alleviate all forms of ignorance in all forms of life. So in regards to rum, if you're being educated about the rum category, you could make what's called then informed opinions about what you're drinking or what you don't want to drink. So we continue doing the masterclasses that we'd normally do at Rum Fest, but online. Because we're allowed in the UK, we're allowed to actually be in bars. We were able to have some people in the bars doing the masterclass and tasting live. Then we film and stream that live online as well. So you could join in online. You could come to London or come to the bar and be part of that process there. You could products and do the tasting at home. So any way you wanted to be involved in Rum Fest, you could in this new world, you was able to be a part of it. And we had speakers from all over the world, like Spence from Appleton. We had Miguel Smith, the brand of Mount Gay. We had Loic, who is he's a cellar master of his distillery in Mauritius. He was on the call doing masterclasses and talks and seminars. Speaking of African rum, as you introduced to, so it was his first seminar online, and he did Rum Fest. So it was a nice way to integrate the new norm with a little bit of getting people together, all drinking and sipping rum together. Because the guys that actually came to the actual event, and we only allowed, like, it was a bar that could hold 60 people comfortably. We only allowed 20 people, so we could socially distance. But those 20 people that came and sat down and sampled and taste rums, they were so appreciative. They said, you know what, we've been wanting to sit down in the bar and have a drink and talk about rum with fellow rum people for the last 7-8 months. Now we can do it. So it was brilliant actually doing it, especially in this.
So going digital, did you have a bigger reach? Were there people that would normally not make that trek to London for the Rum Fest actually, like, go, you know what, if I can do it online, get this stuff sent to me, still enjoy seminars and events and stuff and taste rum? So do you think your reach went being digital?
Yeah, 100%. We had people from Canada, USA, Australia, Africa, all over Europe that actually tuned in to the actual show live. And then we haven't actually released the videos from the presentation of the masterclass. We're saving to January so we can slowly in to try to build up the momentum and the love for Rum Fest 2021. But we had people from all over the world tuning in just to listen to the talks. They may have had some of the rums in front of them. They may not have. They may have just bought another rum. But it was a nice way to actually spread the brand, talk about the brand, and also spread the rum love as well. But yeah, we had a lot more people from a diverse and international background than we'd normally, just because we were digital.
So with did you make the change? Like, you would have how Rum Fest was going to go be digital, as well as launching, and you launched a rum brand, your new rum brand during
Wow.
COVID. During COVID, like Equiano, you released that during COVID. Like, how was that? Obviously, we've talked about it. Like, I've talked to a lot of marketing companies and stuff about, like, usually marketing companies are thinking 2 to 5 years ahead, and we're literally like thinking 3 to 6 months. And you've got like all the marketing heads are just twitching because they're like, I can't plan further than 6 months. Obviously, it wasn't the plan to launch during COVID, but about sort of I think you briefly mentioned, and you were very cagey about it when we were talking in Lisbon last year at the Lisbon Bar Show.
Yeah.
You were pretty
Right, yeah, that's right.
in May 2019. What was the thought process, and what was the driver behind this? Because we talked offline that I've never tasted African rum before. Just doesn't make its way to Canada. Very rarely makes its way to Australia, from where, like, and even in Australia, I left before rum culture really became anything in 2006. What was the thought process? I love the name. I love the story behind it. And I think that's a huge part of the brand. What was the thought process by taking a fantastic African rum, blending it with a fantastic Caribbean rum, and then launching your own brand, when Rum Fest is obviously got put in your lap pretty hard this year too, and it's a big thing, traveling around talking about rum brands and stuff. Now you have your own. What was the thought process and the driver behind all that?
Well, yeah, you're right. We alluded to it back in Lisbon, which was back in 2019, and that's when we started seeding the ideas of how we wanted to actually launch this new rum and this new style of rum. We officially did a soft launch at Rum Fest last year in October 2019. And then our plan was January 2020. We're going to do a bigger press launch in the UK, and then eventually move into the US around April, about 3 months' time. We actually did some tastings at the Miami Rum Congress, which I co-own. And we did that in February this year. It seems so long ago. February this year in Miami. So we did some tastings there and made a lot of fans. But then all of a sudden, this pandemic happened. And we were like, oh no, what do we do? So we were just basically just putting the brakes. We were going to put the brakes on. We knew we had all this product. We knew we had a great rum, a great story, great packaging. But then all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, people started basically going online and doing research, doing the work. They were going around and looking at, they were drinking at home, they were drinking off premises. They were looking for new brands and good brands. Rum's got a lot of love. You mentioned the name Equiano, which was named after a freedom fighter, an abolitionist called Lauder Equiano, who was enslaved in Africa, sent to Barbados. And then from Barbados, he went to Virginia in the States, and from Virginia, he went to the UK. When we created the brand, we wanted the rum to make that same journey. A rum from Africa, it goes to Barbados, where it's blended and bottled at Foursquare. It then makes its way to the US and makes its way to the UK. So that was a journey we were going to make. And we made that journey before the pandemic, before everything happened in America, where political issues, certain issues really drove people's minds to actually say, wow, we need to look at the world in a different way. And one of the conversations that was happening around the world, especially in the UK, was Lauder Equiano, because of what he did as an abolitionist, as a person who wrote a book about being enslaved. It was a 9-time bestseller. People were saying we need to be building statues of him if we're going to be taking down other statues. And that's who we dedicated our rum to. So it was just a coincidence. It was a coincidence, but it was a story that I wanted to tell before the world really echoed that. So we were in the right place at the right time in regards to that. And because of that, people started buying it like it was going out of fashion. People were buying the rums or ordering the rums. It was like, wow, I know we were trying to slow down, but we actually sold 3 times more than we actually, or we've sold so far 3 times more than we actually budgeted for before the pandemic. Because not only did people buy the product because it piqued their interest, because of the name, because of how it was made, where it was made, who made it, but the most important thing, which I feel, is they drank the liquid and they came back for more. It tasted good as well. And when you got someone like Richard Seale from Foursquare blending, your master blender, blending the rums, then you got a good shot of having a good liquid. Yeah. So that helps in a big way. So it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't designed to launch at this particular time. It just happened organically. And it's going incredibly well. And we've had a lot of love with people sampling and tasting this rum, which is the first rum that I know of that is a blend of rums from the African continent and the Caribbean region, which is why we call it an African Caribbean rum.
So it's rum aged in bourbon barrels, and then a Barbados rum aged in cognac barrels. Is that correct?
Correct. That's right. Yeah. So the rums from Mauritius, Mauritius as an island, was never colonized because there was no one living there. When the Dutch landed there in the 1600s, there was just dodos, and they ate them all, which is why the dodos are extinct. So the Dutch, they cooked them up, a little bit of hot sauce, a bit of oil, ate all the dodos. And then obviously it was a great strategic island to get into the rest of Asia, coming from Africa to other parts of Asia. So the French took a piece of that. Then the English took a piece of that, and next thing you know, they're warring, they're fighting, they're bringing in indigenous slave workers from the African continent and from Asia as well. And then of course planting sugarcane. So it became an important strategic post for the French and for the English. So culture-wise, they have a French culture and they have an English culture, and that reflects on the style of rum that they make. So they make rums from molasses, which the ex-English colonies, Jamaica, Barbados, so on, would make. But they also make rums from fresh sugarcane juice as well, which is similar to what you'll get in Martinique and Guadeloupe. So of the 6 distilleries, in fact 7 now, but of the distilleries there, half will do fresh sugarcane juice rums and half will do molasses rums. So it's an interesting island, beautiful island. Pretty much every blade of grass on the island is sugarcane. It is called a green island, but it is beautiful. It's exotic, great food, great people, and one of my favorite places for rum. And I just said, if I'm ever going to do a brand, I have to have rums or use rums from Mauritius. So when I had the opportunity to do this, I'm like, well, let's see if Richard will think the same way. Richard from Foursquare, and he was like, yeah, they're not bad. That's good enough for me. Send it to him. He blended it up with his rums. Hey, presto, we have Equiano.
What sort of Mauritius usually? Because again, like I said, I haven't tasted a lot of Mauritius rums. What sort of style would you sort of lean it towards? If for the layman person listening to the podcast right now goes, okay, well, I've never tasted any of those. What sort of flavor profiles are we looking for?
Wow, it's a tough question. The reason why I say it's a tough question because of two main facts. One is you have some distilleries using molasses and some distilleries using fresh sugarcane juice. So automatically, you're going to have 2 different raw materials for your rum. You also have some distilleries using pot stills and some distilleries using column stills, traditional column stills. So it's not the multi-column stills, but it's traditional either twin column or Creole stills. So again, you're going to have 2 different styles of rums there. And you have at least 2 distilleries that have both stills, both pot and column, just like you see like in Barbados or in St. Lucia. Or in Jamaica. So they're doing what I like to call single blended rums, where it's a blend of pot still and traditional column stills from one distillery. So it's very hard to pinpoint what style of rum comes from Mauritius. It's similar to try to describe the style of whiskey that comes from Scotland. Because Islay is going to be different from Campbelltown. Campbelltown is different from Speyside, different from Lowlands, different from Highlands. So with Mauritius, it's very hard to pinpoint. But what we can say with Mauritian rums, they are very similar to the English or the ex-English colony rums that you find in the Caribbean. But also, they have a little bit of the French influence, but they will use pot stills, where in Martinique and Guadeloupe, they very rarely would use pot stills to make their agricole rums. So it creates its own unique type of style. Again, one of the reasons why we use ex-cognac casks for the Equiano is because because of the French influence, they have a lot of cognac barrels that are sent to Mauritius, and they love aging their rums in cognac casks. So you can get some rums that are really nice, dry finish, subtle vanilla notes, really big orchard fruits that you get naturally from those Limousin oak French casks, where the American oak cask gives lots of big vanilla and cocoa and sweet notes you get from the vanilla from those ex-bourbon casks. So yeah, a lot more drier Mauritian rums. They don't add sugar to their rums unless they're making local spiced or flavored rums where they'll add a little bit of sugar and fruit. But their rums out there will only will be unsweetened as well.
So you launched the brand to the state of rum, and we briefly touched on this before, like the name, the brand, and everything. And you're very vocal. I've always loved your massive essays you put up on Facebook when some other marketing company decides to put out a new rum, because that's really what it is. It's not usually actual people who are rum lovers or founders. It's usually 9 times out of 10 a marketing company that's like, rum uptick this year. Let's release a rum brand, you know. And I think it's happening a little bit with tequila as well. It's like this sort of marketing companies like, maybe we're onto some, maybe they're onto something here. Let's buy some rum from a ex distillery, bring it to the UK or bring it to the US, blend it up, chuck it in a bottle, and then name it. What was the last one I think you wrote about was Privateer. And
Privateer is one of the best rums. Privateer is great. Privateer is created by a lady named Maggie Campbell down in New England, the old New England, actually in Boston. She creates some amazing stuff. Actually, she's making, for me, probably the best rum in the North American continent at the moment. But I think the rum you might be thinking of is I'm trying to think of which ones, because there's so many crazy marketing ones out there.
And that was the thing. I have tasted Privateer, fantastic, like New England rum, which is a whole different category unto itself, like Nova Scotia and Newfoundland rum on the East Coast.
Oh, wow. Is that Screech? Is that the Screech?
Yes, but I have some in my collection that is kind of crazy because of that area. They'd bring molasses up to Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and they'd be making rum. Wow. So there's a massive rum culture up there, and I have some crazy styles from the East Coast of Canada. But
I'd love to try some of that.
if we ever can travel again and we can meet up, I'll bring you some little tasting bottles. But with this sort of marketing companies, they lean into this colonialism, and they're not really researching the direction that rum is taking. You know, and I think tequila and mezcal have had a few instances of that over the last couple of years as well, is where there's this sort of, I'm going to say, whitewashing of rum culture and rum history to sort of leverage whatever the hell they're trying to leverage. Where do you think the state of rum is right now? Is there rum taking a bit of an awakening when it comes to like controls and GIs? I've read a lot about GIs and AOCs and stuff like that. The direction that rum's taking right now, is it for the better, or is it still sort of murky in the way that a lot of people don't fully understand how every country makes their rum? Like you were saying about Mauritius, like you've got sugar juice, you've got molasses, you've got different stills, you've got different aging processes, so on and so forth. And I think every country in the Caribbean has that as well. Like there's no definition for every individual country's rum, because you can go and find a little distillery that makes something completely different to everybody else. Where do you think the direction is for the education? Like I know you're a big proponent of education for the general consumer, and getting away from this sort of mentality of like rum has always been this sort of secondary
Wild West.
Yeah, the Wild West. That's a perfect example. What do you think the direction is for that?
Well, I mean, the rums are definitely going in the right direction in regards to people understanding the differences between the various different styles, or more importantly, the origins of where rums are being made. You highlighted something that was very, very important: the fact that a lot of people don't understand exactly what they have inside their bottle before they actually purchase it. And the reason why is because they see rum as all the same. All rums are the same. But that would be like saying that all whiskeys are the same. But the fact that certain whiskey territories and areas have spent a lot of money, or have invested a lot of money, or are respected and given the credibility that they truly deserve, they rightly deserve, it means a consumer can see the word Scotch whiskey on a label and understand that it's from Scotland. They also understand that it's going to have certain rules and regulations if they know what the rules and regulations are. Because there's a lot of people that drink Scotch whiskey that don't know the rules and regulations of what a Scotch whiskey is. Same as if they see straight bourbon or straight Kentucky bourbon in the Americas. They may not know what a straight Kentucky bourbon is. They may not know what the definition of a mash bill is for a bourbon. But what they do know is that it's going to be quality. And if it has Kentucky on there, it's from Kentucky. If it just has bourbon on there, it has to be from America. Now, rum, that's where rum has to get to. But here's the thing. Rum at the moment, certain rums at the moment actually have that at the point of source. So Jamaica has rules and regulations. So you can't have a small little distillery in Jamaica making a product and not adhering to the rules and regulations of what a Jamaica rum is. And they won't be able to use, and if they didn't, they won't be able to use the word Jamaica rum on their label. Yeah. But when that product is sold into Europe or sold into America, America doesn't respect the rules and regulations, neither does Europe, of what Jamaica, the rules and regulations of what Jamaica rum is. And the reason why is because there is no financial reason, there's no financial benefit for them to respect a Jamaican geographical indication, a GI. There is for bourbon, because there's a lot of Scotch whiskey sold in Europe, from Europe into America. Yeah. So that's why the definition of Scotch whiskey in America is whatever the Scottish say. Yeah. And the definition of a bourbon in Europe is whatever the Americans say. Yeah, because there's trade agreements between Scotland, America, Europe, and America to respect each other's GIs. Unfortunately, a lot of these smaller independent islands from the tropical, from these tropical backgrounds, islands that were colonized by a lot of the Western countries, they don't have that respect, or they don't have that. Definitely don't have the respect and don't have that trade-in where they can say, where a little island like Jamaica, who has a geographical indication, a definition of what Jamaica rum is, they can't go to Europe and say, this is the definition of Jamaican rum. No one can sell a product in Europe with Jamaica rum on the label unless they adhere to our rules. And if you do that, we'll respect Scotch whiskey. We'll respect Irish whiskey. There's no trade agreements. There's no agreements there. So there's no incentive for Europe to want to enforce Jamaican rum rules, which is why you have product in Europe from all over, either bought from Jamaica, taken to another country, loads of sugar added to it, which is illegal in Jamaican rum. And then you're still using the word Jamaica rum on your label, or even worse, where it's not even rum. It's a cane spirit, sugar beet, caramel inside there. And they use the word Jamaica because Jamaica is a brand, and stick a pirate on a label. And you go to Eastern Europe and you're seeing Jamaica this, Jamaica that on a product. It's not even rum, but no one's suing them. No one's going after them. No one's protecting that because there is no financial interest for that. So until the EU, until Europe starts to protect Jamaica rum, or Jamaica as a small little tiny island of 3 million people has something to barter with, then unfortunately rum is not going to be respected except for within the 1% of geeks and rum knowledgeable people and people that really understand what rums are. It's only going to be respected in that field. The 90% of rum drinkers around the world don't care. They just, as long as it tastes good, they're going to buy it.
I thought everybody would be scared of Mama Spence to come and like smack their asses for putting Jamaican rum on bottles that aren't.
You go to, there's a place called Macros, which is like one of these big, massive supermarket stores in Europe. And if you go to one particular place, I went in Czech Republic, the Macros there, I saw at least 5 different brands that had Jamaica on the label, bottled in Czech Republic.
Oh wow!
They weren't rum. They were made from cane. They're made from neutral spirit, made from sugar beet, caramel flavors, spices, and they're sold as Jamaica rum because Jamaica's a brand. That couldn't happen with Scotch whiskey at all. Yeah, because Scotch Whiskey Association is powerful enough to look after and support the 160 odd distilleries and the various different brands that comes out of Scotland. So until rum has that, it's going to be very hard for it to be recognized in that light in the masses. So people like myself and people like yourself and the rum geeks that are working their way down are trying to educate people on the different areas that make rum and their relations. And my dream is for people to prejudice rum by where the rum is made. That's my dream. I want someone to go into a store and look at a bottle of, say, Jamaica rum, and they'll say, oh, that rum's a bit too funky for me. It's going to have a lot of rich hogger, and it's going to have dunder, it's going to have this, because in their mind, they're thinking heavy Jamaican flavors. It's from Jamaica. It has that terroir, the local. they're prejudiced. I don't mind that. I don't mind that, because then at least they're now categorizing what a Jamaica rum is, the same way they categorize what a Scotch is, same way they categorize what a bourbon is, a rye. That's my dream for rum, categorizing rums by where they're made: Jamaica, Barbados, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Venezuela.
And obviously, you've had huge success with Equiano, and congratulations on that. Like, to launch a new brand in the era that we're in. What is the ultimate goal? I noticed that $2 from every bottle goes to charities and endeavors.
Yes.
So fantastic CSR, like corporate social responsibility on your part. What's your ultimate dream and goal for Equiano in the future? Obviously, you've sold, what'd you say, 3 times more than what you planned on selling?
Yeah, 3 times more than what we planned in January, before we knew what the pandemic was.
So, like, how do you do that? Because it is a blend that is pretty specific. It's not like you're saying I've got 6 different distilleries from around the Caribbean, Mauritius, stuff like that, where I can blend that to, like, this one. I got a bit more of this one. You're really just working with 2 different distilleries, 2 different styles. How are you plan on mitigating shortages if it blows up more so than it already has?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if we were just going to stick with those 2 distilleries, we have access to about 70,000 barrels of rum.
Wow.
There are about 45 in Foursquare in Barbados, another 25 in Mauritius at the Grays Distillery. And then if it did start to grow in the way we expect, you forecast, so you start laying down rums now. But here's the great thing about being blenders, and the fact that our rum is an African-Caribbean rum. We have a whole continent we can play with. We can get rums not just from Mauritius. We might pick rums and looking to get rums maybe from South Africa, maybe from the East Coast, maybe near towards Kenya or Rwanda. There's a lot of sugarcane growing there. Or maybe the West Coast, maybe Nigeria, where Lauda Equiano was, where it was born. And then the Caribbean, because Richard Steele's part of the brand. Barbados is the home of rum. It has to be connected to Barbados there. But even if we decided to maybe add a little component from another neighboring Caribbean island, as long as we still retain our DNA, we'll be seen as quality blenders of rums. I mean, why is there not a Johnny Walker of rum? Why can't Equiano be the Johnny Walker of rum?
It's very
yeah, amazing spirit. They've got access to some of the best whiskeys, best single malt whiskeys from various different distilleries in Scotland, and they blend. Jim Beveridge, master blender there, blends his whiskeys from different places. Why can't Equiano do that?
Do you think that's the direction is putting out different expressions, or is it's really sort of thinking about, okay, this is what I want to be long term, this is the direction we're taking? Is there more expressions coming down the line, or
there's a new one launching in about 2.5, maybe 3 months? We have a lighter one for our bartender friends, using a little bit of molasses and fresh cane juice rums, again from Barbados and Mauritius. So we have a lightly aged rum. But then after that, we've got rums that'll have age statements. We're going to have some vintages. We've got a really nice vintage that will coming out. Can't say too much about it, but there'll be a date of when both rums that are blended were distilled, but in 2 different continents, distilled at the same time, and then they'll be blended together for you to sample and taste. So yeah, there'll be some great, really fun, exciting blends, which is, again, where premium and top-end rums are going, where you're creating rum experiences, not only just in mind, you can say through marketing, but also on the palate, where you're tasting some flavors that you may not have tasted and tried before when it comes to rum. So yeah, we got some great rums coming up in the near future under the Equiano brand. And these are stuff that I wanted to do from years ago. The time was never right, but the time was right now.
We've all got plenty of time right now. So
That's true. That's true.
I want to thank you so much, man. This has been awesome. I'm hoping we can get a bottle up into Canada fairly shortly, and sort of hopefully start seeing it on shelves here.
Well, you got an exclusive because you're the first to find out. We've just been agreed in three regions in Canada.
Seriously?
Yep.
That's fantastic. Who's distributing you up here?
Well, one is some place called, I've never even heard of it, called Manoba.
Manitoba. Manitoba.
What was
Okay,
it?
Manitoba. Leave the
That's
Canadian
it.
pronunciation with me.
So
Manitoba.
they were the first. They were the first to say, "Yeah, we want it. We're going to put an order in." It's gone. It went through all the tastings,
Yeah.
and then of course the biggest one, of course, is the
LCBO.
Ontario
Yeah.
LCBO.
Biggest
So yeah,
in the world.
we've gone through them, and now just waiting for that order now to come through. So
Fantastic.
you'll be able to get a bottle inside your hands very soon. I'll get one sent to you so you can try it and give me your honest opinion.
I appreciate that very much. Well, thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. It was great catching up. I've got a list of people in my head that I always want to catch up live, like to get like face to face when I travel.
Yeah,
and that list slowly but surely has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller because you just never know when you're traveling again. Like Angus Winchester, Simon Ford, yourself, people that I would like to interview face to face, and bit by bit that list is getting whittled down because we're not traveling anytime soon and meeting face anytime soon. So thanks as always for your support, man. Congratulations on success. That's you've just grinding it out pretty hard this year. So I really appreciate it. And I'll chat to you really soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Let's do a rum in Canada very soon.
Yes, definitely. We can do that. Okay. Thanks, buddy.